So without further ado, please, please, please make some noise for my guy, Mr. Randy Kine, all right?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie.
Representing MailChimp, I apologize. He has his team inside the building with him today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here in Atlanta. Thank you to RenderATL 2023. Let's go. I am Randy Kine, a senior engineer and tech lead at Intuit MailChimp. And without further ado, we're going to talk about failing upwards. So I'm going to go through the roadmap a little bit. We're going to spend some time talking about my own failures. We're going to talk about failure in many different flavors, like tech leading, running projects, and things like that. And we're going to talk about why failing is important and how some folks can fail more than others. So that's me, senior engineer and tech lead at Intuit MailChimp. I'm from Michigan, and if you've ever met anyone from Michigan, they have to hold their hand up and introduce themselves by where they are. I'm from Flint, Michigan, and I like to describe myself as a product engineer that sometimes likes to impersonate SREs, site reliability engineers, for those that might not be familiar. So I'm going to spend some time talking about where my perspective comes from. In 2018, I failed my first college class, and that was pretty painful. I think it was Writing 101 or something like that. It was a pretty entry-level class. Ended up failing that. And then in 2019, I continued that and dropped out of community college. This was pretty painful too, but a little bit less painful because I had found an opportunity as a junior engineer. Somebody had taken a chance on me as someone with no experience, and that led me kind of down the path that I'm on now. 2020, I broke production for the first time. That was pretty painful for our customers, our users, myself, my team, pretty much everyone involved. And as an engineer, I think it's something that happens to everyone eventually. And it's not something to necessarily be afraid of. 2022, I changed jobs, and that's here listed under potential failures, because there's a lot that goes into a job change, into a job search, like failing interviews. I failed plenty of interviews for various things. But in 2022, I joined Intuit MailChimp, and I still love working there, so shout out Intuit MailChimp. And in 2023, I dropped out of college again. I didn't learn my lesson the first time, apparently. And went back, took more classes, and signed up for really hard classes, and that was a questionable decision. Ended up failing those and dropped that again. So I'm going to include a few disclaimers here. The first one being that I have all of the biases of a lucky survivor. If you've ever seen that presentation with the airplane with all of the dots on the wings, then you know lucky survivor is a bias that can happen from someone like me, who someone else might have done all the same things that I did, but they didn't experience the same things. They didn't end up, becoming a senior engineer / tech lead. The other one is that I've only worked at large, well-funded enterprise organizations as an individual contributor. I haven't worked at startups or founded my own company or anything like that. So that's just a couple disclaimers. So failing at MailChimp. MailChimp has always had a reputation as the underdog, and this identity comes from the people within MailChimp. It's one of the reasons why I work there, and one of the reasons why I joined, because this came apparent in the interviews. And a huge portion of engineers on the team that I work with, and outside of my team and stuff like that, and engineering leaders within the company, got into tech through non-traditional paths. They started in something else and switched careers, like maybe bartending. If you went to Tony Samaglia's talk last year, why your product team needs a bartender, he was bartending and found a path into tech and found people to take chances on him. I've also worked with software engineers that had a background in rocket engineering, and that probably didn't necessarily directly translate to their ability to write code, but it's pretty cool to have different people in different backgrounds nonetheless. Or my own teammate studied music at Berkeley and found a path into tech too. So if you've tried a different career and abandoned it for software, you probably strongly resonate with the idea of failure. So I'm going to switch gears again and talk a little bit more about tech leading and failure through that lens. So what's different about being a tech lead? I'm a fairly recent tech lead, maybe 3-4 months ago. So I'm still trying to figure it out myself, and I'm still learning a lot. You're expected to be a leader and a delegator and less of a doer of things. And the weight of the responsibility and the range of responsibilities increases. But what's not different is that you're still you, and you still need mentorship to grow, and that you're still always learning new things and adapting to changing realities. So as part of the adapting to changing realities thing, adaptability is a skill that you need to have. And it's part of the reason why generalist or T-shaped engineers are highly valuable. At my first company, I wasn't immediately as part of the engineering organization. I started as a IT consultant, I think was my title. So it was kind of engineering adjacent, and in IT consulting, the whole idea is T-shaped engineers, of somebody having a super broad set of skills, but one area that they dive particularly deep on. And I think that that's kind of the mold of where the future of the industry is going. But I think adaptability plays an underrated role, in my opinion, in a person's ability to succeed at any given level or any given situation or anything that they're at. For me, the hardest problems that I've always faced have never been purely technical. They've always been at the intersection of people and technology. Working in a large organization makes this more and more clear, that you're trying to get groups of people together to move in the same direction or to share the same mindset about a problem or a project. And this is all based on the sociology/psychology of big groups of people. And that's why some of my favorite engineering leaders and managers came from psychology backgrounds or sociology backgrounds. So in that aspect, there's a lot of things that we don't provide actual training for on the leadership skill. Things like self-management and running projects and planning, leadership skills, growing people, cost management, and relationship building. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into each of these things, right? So on the self-management side, you're expected to be productive, just get things done. You're expected to communicate proactively. You're expected to learn as you go, always. And you're expected to take care of yourself. And that's the last bullet point, but that's something that you can't overlook. You have to take care of yourself. So running projects and planning, you have to participate. You have to show up to meetings and actually be a participant in them. You're supposed to collaborate with everyone. You're not just engineers on a team. You're working with product people across the organization to solve problems for our users. You're working with testing folks to make sure that the things that you built actually run and actually work. You're working with design to make sure that to provide feedback and give input on those things. You're also supposed to be actively steering, so not just a passenger along for the ride. You're also supposed to be decisive, and sometimes a decision needs to be made, and it's most effective to just make one, even if it's the wrong one. You're also expected to make estimates and actually be held accountable to those estimates. On the leadership side, you're supposed to set an example of what good engineering looks like, and you're supposed to delegate with trust to your teammates that they can do the job to a high degree. You're also supposed to be present. I mentioned this before, but you have to show up to meetings. You're expected to resolve conflicts. My team doesn't have very many of those, but if they did come up, then you're the person supposed to make a decision. And you're also supposed to be sensitive to signs of problems. Nobody wants to work on the watermelon project that is like green on the outside, but on the inside it's all red. So you're supposed to pay attention when potential problems might appear and jump on them early. On the growing people side, you're supposed to steer people towards opportunities, aka sponsorship, if you're growing the engineers around you. You're supposed to push people beyond their comfort zones and help them develop skills. And then there's the cost management side. You're supposed to weigh trade-offs. You're supposed to understand the amount of people that you have allocated to the priorities that the team has on like a week-to-week basis. And you're supposed to work within the constraints, because most of us don't just get a brand new product or a brand new idea that they get to do greenfield development on. Normally we're adapting something that exists to some new state. Then on the relationship building side, you're supposed to be managing up and down, and you're not really managing the people below you, but you are trying to influence them, but without any actual authority over that person. And then managing up, you're trying to communicate everything about the team to leadership, to other teams and other leaders in the company. I've found that most relationships are rarely perfectly equal, and that most of the time someone is actively driving and someone is a passenger. And it's important to recognize when you need to be driving. And all of that is to say that if that sounds like a huge risk area for failure, that's because it is. Those are all things that if one of them goes wrong, something could fail and something could happen. A project deadlines could slip. Our users could experience pain through something that we broke. Anything like that. So I'm going to go over to some sports analogies. LeBron James, one of the greatest of all time, played 20 seasons so far and only won 4 championships. But does that make the other 16 years a failure? I bet that if we asked him, we can't right now, but if we asked him, he would probably say that those 16 years are what led to those 4 years. And just in general in sports, every year only one team can win the championship, so don't make your success criteria winning the championship the first time. That is to say that I think failure should always be an option. Nobody's born with the skills to just be an engineer or be a tech lead. These are all things that anyone can learn. But it means getting outside of your comfort zone, embracing failure and learning from it, and to constantly seek feedback and use it to change. Not to glorify failure though, because failure does suck. It is some of the most painful times that I've went through. It was not enjoyable, and it felt like the world was ending. But I can't deny the values that I've seen in the leaders that I admire the most from the people that I work with that have grown themselves as a result of failing and have their own experiences of failing. If you've ever heard the quote that a senior engineer has failed more times than a junior engineer has tried, that's pretty applicable here. Well, why is it important to fail? It forces you to be honest with yourself, and it develops intangible leadership qualities. And intangible leadership qualities are another one of those sports things where maybe someone in a locker room has, if they say that someone has intangible leadership qualities, they are calm under pressure, they are the person that sets an example for everyone. And it's called intangible because it's hard to say that those are specific qualities, but yeah. Teaches you things like how to creatively problem solve, how to remain calm in stressful situations, how to be adaptable when things change. And we're in an industry where things change every single day. Teaches you how to be resilient during hard times and how to help other people be resilient during hard times. And all of those things sound like leadership qualities, but these are just life skills that failure brings and failure teaches you. So I'm going to ask, how often do you intentionally put yourself in a position where you are likely to fail? Or for mentors, how often do you sponsor your mentees for positions where they are likely to fail? I think that as engineering leaders, it's important to put the folks around you in positions where they're likely to fail, with a safety net, of course. I think that most companies have fairly decent DE&I programs, but I think that this is a far overlooked way of growing the folks around you into leadership positions. So I want to talk a little bit about adaptability as an interview signal. I think that adaptability should be one of the highest priority interview signals that you can look for as an interviewer. If you can find a candidate that has tried a lot of things and failed at some of them, and that doesn't deter them, they keep trying new things, they keep learning and growing as a person, that is an incredible trait for an engineer or any person at a company to have. And especially prioritizing that over someone who has X specific experience or doesn't have specific experience in one particular thing or another. That as an industry, we should prioritize adaptability over previous experiences. So I'm going to include this quote. In a lot of organizations, the people who are allowed to fail and fail up are overwhelmingly male and overwhelmingly white, aka they look like me, and that if failing builds valuable leadership qualities and some folks are allowed to fail while others never get the opportunity, that may be why your company's C-suite and executive leadership team looks the same. And I think that as an industry, we can do better. Thank you for listening to my talk at RenderATL.